Okay, hi everyone. Good to see you all here. I'm Ravi Agrawal. I'm the editor-in-chief of Foreign Policy magazine and the host of FP Live. And it is a real pleasure to get to sit here with Dr. Majed Al Ansari. He is, of course, the advisor to the Prime Minister of Qatar and the official spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Majed, I usually get to see you in Doha, so it's nice to see you here. Welcome to New York.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with Israel's attack on Doha on the 9th of September, targeting Hamas leadership. There are reports that your Prime Minister has demanded an apology from Israel. Is that correct?
Well, Ravi, the issue here is not who is going to issue an apology. The issue here is that there is a grave attack on sovereignty that has happened, an attack on the concept of mediation, an attack on peace that took place at a time when my country was mediating in 12 different mediations, including between Hamas and Israel, when the Prime Minister met with the Hamas political office on Monday and gave them the proposal by President Trump and told them they have until Friday to study it. So it was known to all parties that those who were attacked at the time were sitting down with the proposal of President Trump in front of them, hoping to get the hostages home, prisoners home, to get the people of Gaza some safety through the agreement that was pushed through by President Trump. The attack happened in a residential area that houses 5,000 people, a number of schools. These schools had to shelter in place during the attack. Kids, including American kids studying in this international university, had to shelter in place at the time of the attack. The neighborhood has 13 different embassies operating from the same neighborhood. This was not an isolated incident. It's not an assassination of a dissident. It's not an attack within a conflict zone. This is a safe country that has always been a safe place for negotiations, for mediations, for talks between parties. You know, at the time the attack happened, we had a Colombian delegation that just arrived in Doha for the talks between the Colombian government and the Gaetanista Colombian army. We had the DRC Rwanda talks undergoing at the same plan. At the same time, and we had a brother of one of the hostages in Gaza, in Doha, to meet with Qatari officials. So Qatar is a platform for all of these mediation and all of these negotiations that are taking place around the clock. As I said, more than 12 of them are happening. Attacking Qatar this way puts not only all of these people at risk, including my people, not only killed for the first time ever by an Israeli attack a Qatari citizen, a GCC citizen, Badr al-Dosari, a 22-year-old ISF officer who was there doing his sacred duty and providing security to his people, injuring a number of his colleagues as well. It was an attack on the concept of mediation between adversaries, the concept of solving conflict through peaceful means, the concept of international diplomacy.
What does this do to relations with Israel now? Is it recoverable?
You know, Ravi, I have to say that this is a paradigm shift for the whole region. You know, Qatar, after the Oslo Accords, was one of the first countries to start engaging Israel in the region because we saw a chance at that point for peace. We saw a chance for our children and our children's children to live in a neighborhood that is not synonymous with conflict. We saw a chance for the Palestinian people to realize finally a state, and for that issue, the Arab-Israeli conflict, to be resolved within diplomatic means. So sadly, that did not happen, and the situation got worse every day. But Israel was never seen as a direct threat to any GCC country. As a matter of fact, some GCC countries...
You just used the past tense there. You mean
yes.
It is now a threat?
Of course. I mean, if one of your countrymen is killed by an airstrike by any country, if that country decides to unilaterally, and Prime Minister Netanyahu, as we know, did it unilaterally even behind the backs of his own intelligence, to attack a sovereign country, a residential neighborhood in that country, putting everybody at risk with around 10 to 12 missiles coming in from the air. Does that not merit people who think of Qatari national security, people who think of the GCC national security, to think of Israel as a national security threat? Well, if you read the GCC statement that came out of the GCC meeting that happened on the sideline of the Arab Islamic Summit with the participation of 57 countries in Doha, it says very clearly, and this is not only Qatar, this is all the GCC countries combined. MBS was there in Doha, MBZ was in Qatar a couple of days before, and it was total agreement between the GCC countries. If you read the first article, it says, this attack puts every agreement in the region at risk.
Now, Qatar is, of course, a very close ally of the United States. There are reports that Prime Minister Netanyahu informed President Trump in the United States about the attack ahead of time. Do you believe those reports? And if they are true, what does that mean for the Doha-Washington relationship?
You know, the first call His Highness got after the attack was by President Trump, who informed him personally that the U.S. was not consulted and was not informed about such an attack, and he said that the U.S. would make sure through his leadership that an attack like this never happens again. And the Prime Minister was in New York here for the Emergency Security Council session, which through Algeria we asked for. And on the sideline of that, he met with President Trump, and he met with Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary Rubio. Secretary Rubio was in Doha days ago. The U.S. has been working very closely with us to deter such actions. This is the unilateral actions of Netanyahu. We are working very closely with the United States to make sure that that doesn't happen again. And collectively in the GCC, we are here for the UNGA in New York, and there will be meetings, direct meetings with President Trump to talk about the dangers of an unhinged leadership taking such a unilateral decision in our region and throwing stability and the prosperity of the Middle East, and especially the GCC, into chaos.
You sound very angry about Israel. You just said they have an unhinged leadership. Do you think the United States has leverage and the ability to use that leverage to change Israel's actions in the region? I mean, it is not just Qatar. It has also launched attacks on other countries. Again, it says it is defending its interests. It is attacking terrorists in the region. Of course, you will disagree with that premise.
Well, the same week that Qatar was bombed, 7 countries in the region were bombed by Israeli airstrikes. The level of regional spillover of this war has reached a tipping point. We are now at a point where Prime Minister Netanyahu decides to bomb Damascus, decides to bomb South Lebanon, decides to send his troops into South Syria, bomb Yemen, and now bomb Qatar, with complete impunity or accountability. Any country, any leadership of any country is responsible for defending their own. But if that means that you have absolutely no respect for international law or the sovereignty of other countries, then the international country has to intervene and make sure that what you are doing is not harming the sovereignty, the safety, and the security architecture of the region you are in. And this is why we immediately went to the Security Council and to the Human Rights Council in Geneva, and are working very closely with the OIC, with the Arab League, with the ICAO, and with the US.
I have to ask, does any of that matter? Because, I mean, here we are sitting in New York, the 80th anniversary of the United Nations, and do rules matter?
I mean, this is the greatest danger in today's world, Ravi. And you kind of put your finger on the most important thing right here. Is the international rule-based order dying under the pressure of leaders who just decide that they don't care about the rules, they don't care about peace, they don't care about the world order that was founded to stop us from running towards a third world war? Well, the reality of the situation, there are some leaders around the world today that would care less about the international norms, would care less about international law. But it's our duty, especially us as the main benefactors of the international system, you know, the small and medium countries around the world that have benefited throughout the years in protecting our sovereignty and being able to tap into international markets and to work with international partners through having international organization, international order in the way it has been. It is our role right now to push for the safeguarding of the international system, the safeguarding of international law. And I totally agree. To a lot of you ask our people, if you ask the people of the Middle East, if you ask the people of the world in general, there's a lot of frustration with the incapacity of the international community to do anything about the myriad of conflicts that just keep, you know, piling in this multi-layered cake of conflict that we are seeing around the world today. But what is the alternative? Is it a power-based international system that gives any regional hegemon the right to do whatever it wants in its region, in its vicinity, as long as it is able to do so? Well, if that happens, then, Ravi, we are all at risk.
So let me ask you a broader question. And, you know, it strikes me that not everyone knows the role that Qatar has been playing for the last several decades. You know, you have mediated several conflicts around the world. You have done that, my understanding is, for several reasons. One is the higher calling of trying to solve conflicts around the world, but also because I believe Doha wants to be indispensable to countries around the world as part of its way to secure its interests globally. And your leaders have long seen value in playing that role. But all of that was decided in a time and an era when rules really mattered and there was less of a sense of impunity. If you're of the opinion that today rules matter less, that we're entering some sort of law of the jungle where might is right, then does that model, the Qatari model, no longer work?
You know, Ravi, at the time when we were attacked on the 9th of September, we were conducting 12 different mediations. A couple of days later, between the 14th and the 18th of September, we were holding talks in Doha between the Colombian government and the self-proclaimed Gaetanista Colombian army. And we got, for the first time, an announcement of an agreement that would lead to a second round of talk that will hopefully lead to an agreement that would bring peace to that region. In the same time, an elderly couple, British couple in Afghanistan, after 8 months of painstaking work by Qatari negotiators, were released from Afghanistan, came through Doha, and now are reunited with their family. This is what Qatar is, this is what we believe in, and it will take much more than a bully to drive us away from peace.
But again, I will remind you, in the last few months, you have had Iran send missiles at you for an American military base that America asked you to install there. You have had a lot of public recrimination over the fact that you had originally, brokered talks with the Taliban and the United States, now between Hamas and Israel and the United States, and you're paying the costs for it. You are being attacked.
Peace is not cheap. The commitment to peace is not a luxury. The fact that we have been attacked only proves the importance of the role of mediator and peace facilitator in the world today. The fact that there are those around the world that find these tasks threatening, that find those who stick their head out for the cause of peace threatening to their agendas, is the main reason why we need more peace facilitators around the world today. You know, one of the main reasons we're singled out like this is a lot of states around the world have the capacity to be peace facilitators, have the capacity to be mediators, have the capacity to stick their head out just like us and become mediators, but they don't. They don't because of political considerations internally. They don't because they don't want their risk averse, and they don't want the risk of doing that job. They don't because they have their own agendas that don't go along with the cause for peace. But unless we have other countries stand in solidarity with the mediators, work to be mediators, this will always be an issue, because it's easy to single out one mediator when you like, when it doesn't fit your agenda, and when you don't want for a peace deal to happen. But when you have consortiums for peace developed around the world, consortiums for peace that help people get out of conflict zones, then it's a different situation. And this is why we've started in a lot of our mediations working with a lot of partners. You know, between Hamas and Israel, it is us, Egypt, and the United States. We're not doing it alone. We're working with our European counterparts. We're signing agreements with countries over these issues. In Asia, in Africa, in Latin America, we're working with partners to see how we can build these consortiums and build these, teams of countries that are willing to work for peace. The risk is always there. We pride ourselves on taking that risk. If you go to our constitution, you'll find it smack in the middle of the constitution that says that Qatar uses mediation as foreign policy as a way of pushing peace. And it is the dividend that a country like Qatar must pay for its own peace and security. You can't take for granted the fact that my generation and my children are living in peace and prosperity and hope that the rest of the world will keep that peace and prosperity for our children. We have to do whatever we can do, and yes, at times we have to take the risk.
You spoke very eloquently about what it takes to be a mediator. Part of that is to be seen as neutral. Israel's whole argument is that Qatar is not, in a sense, neutral. It has, backed and funded Al Jazeera, which is currently banned in Israel. And Israel routinely says that Doha should be putting a lot more pressure on Hamas to reach better deal conditions. What is your sense of what's been going wrong in the negotiations so far?
Well, first of all, we've always employed the concept of tactical neutrality, which basically refers to the idea that we are not void of morals, we are not void of principles. We are a country that operates under principled foreign policy. We are very clear when it comes to our causes. Our leadership are very emotional and believe in the causes that our country stands for. And as I said, it's a principled foreign policy. But that doesn't mean that when you get into the negotiation room for the cause of peace, you wouldn't be representing both parties' interests. And this is exactly why Qatar is asked every day to mediate in different conflicts. This is why our portfolio spans from, Afghanistan to the east, and Colombia and Venezuela to the west, going through all of these mediations. If we didn't have that trust from the international community, from conflicting parties, you would never see Qatar playing all of these roles. And I do believe in that model as a model of doing business. If you say that I'm not going to mediate between two parties because I don't like one of them, well, surprise, every conflict around the world that you try to mediate in, you will have a disagreement with one or two of the parties. One or two of the parties is going to do criminal things on the ground, is going to kill innocents on the ground, but it is your job to bring those parties to the table and develop a peaceful outcome for the future generations.
President Trump made his first foreign visit earlier this year to the Middle East. Of course, he received a red carpet welcome in Doha. What is your sense of how countries are managing and navigating Trump in his second term? Look, I can say it, I'm not a diplomat. He is a challenge to the global order. He is unpredictable. And Qatar seems to have figured out a way of navigating Trump. Do you think that's right? And if so, what does that mean? Is that a transactional approach? What is the approach?
Now, Ravi, I'm not going to use your terminology, obviously. As you said,
I'm
a diplomat and you're not. So I don't have the luxury. Maybe years later when I'm retired, we can have a different discussion.
Sure.
But let me tell you very openly, we've worked with this administration, with Trump 1, to end the longest war in US history, to bring some sense of peace to Afghanistan, to bring the people, the American men and women who are fighting in Afghanistan home. Before President Trump came to the White House in his second term, we were working with him, and that accomplished the second and the longest ceasefire in the history of this war in Gaza, right? We are working right now with the administration on DRC, Rwanda. We're working with them on Venezuela, working with them on Colombia, working with them on a myriad of issues. Some of them I can't mention right now, all related to peace facilitation, right? That appreciation of the relationship in Qatar does not go unnoticed. The fact that you have 10,000 servicemen and women operating from Qatar in Al Udeid Air Base, the fact that there is a very developed strategic alliance with the United States. We have an annual strategic dialogue that takes place here. This goes beyond any individual. But working with President Trump, working with this administration very closely is something that has brought a lot of results, a lot of other issues, including between Hamas and Israel. And it's a relationship that is beneficial for the region as a whole and for the world.
Majed Al Ansari, thanks for coming here.
Thank you for having me.
Real pleasure.